In our last episode, the Baja Ha-Ha finally came to an end. We arrived in Cabo San Lucas and celebrated at the famous Squid Row. But the next day, Tropical Storm Raymond hit. Fortunately, we survived unscathed and made our way down to La Paz in the Sea of Cortez. We have now been in La Paz for, well, longer than we expected, as our boat upgrade projects are kinda dragging on. A few weeks ago, we moved the boat from the rather upscale Marina Costa Baja all the way down here to Marina de La Paz, which is right in the center of town, so it's much more convenient for us. It's a great marina. It has a nice little market where you can pick up some basics, and a lovely cafe, which serves mostly gringo food. We're on the best dock, closest to the clubhouse, where they have a cruiser's coffee every morning. As you can see, it's a pretty short walk to our boat from the center of all the action. But we're going to take a little break from our usual episode and do something slightly different. Okay. Hi everyone, this is LeeAnne and Charlie. We're on our boat down here in La Paz, and we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to do basically a debrief of the Baja Ha-Ha, or what Charlie used to call, what did you call it as a project?
Retrospective.
I thought you called it a post-mortem.
Too.
That too. So we're going to do a retrospective post-mortem debrief of the Baja Ha-Ha. I have a number of questions that I received from various friends and family that we're going to ask of each other, and give you some answers to tell you what we thought about the Baja Ha-Ha and what's coming up next. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first question is, what are your favorite memories about the Ha-Ha? So Charlie, I'll let you go ahead and start.
Okay, and my smirking was because Bubba was licking my leg while she was talking.
He does that.
Anyway, as far as favorite memories of the Ha-Ha, the three that stand out are, first one, on the second night of leg 2, we had a squall hit us, and the waves were picking up, the wind was picking up. We had plenty of advance notice, so I had the sails dialed in just right. And I turned off the autopilot, I was hand steering, it was just me and Bubba up there in the cockpit, and it was just beautiful. We're basically sailing and surfing the boat through the swells. It was a lot of fun. It only lasted about a half hour, but it was great. The second thing that stands out is the night watches. Sailing along at night, it's really quiet. There were times when we had crystal clear skies, the stars were out, very brilliant. It was really very enjoyable. And the third, believe it or not, was the daily radio net. I really look forward to every day checking in and seeing where other people were in the fleet relative to us, and just hearing how people did. They would share stories about, key highlights like seeing turtles or whales or catching big fish. It was just very fun to hear what was going on.
Okay, my turn to answer. Favorite memories. Well, the whole thing was just amazing to me, but I have to say, I was really overwhelmed by the kickoff. It was just very emotional. I mean, we've been talking about this for so long, a decade and more, and here it was really happening, and I just felt very emotionally overwhelmed by the big extravaganza and all the boats and the noise and the crowds and the parade. So that was very meaningful for me. And then after that, beyond that, the parties were a big deal to me. I'm a social person, and it was just so much fun to be partying on the beach with all the fun people from the Ha-Ha. Catching fish was a huge highlight for me because I really wanted to learn how to catch fish, and now I know I can do it. So once we get back out there, I'm looking forward to doing a whole lot more of it. And another huge highlight for me is just the people that we met. We made some friendships that I hope will last for the rest of our lives. Julian and Colin on Boundless, love you guys. Can't wait to spend more time with you. Christina on Christina Marie, we had a great time hanging out with them. Patsy from Talion, you're awesome. Jacques from Jacques Bateau. So many friendships that we made. So those are my favorite memories. So our next question is, what were your least favorite memories? And it's kind of funny because my least favorite part of the Ha-Ha were the very late night watches. Like I was okay with the 8 to midnight watch, but the 3 to 6 watch was really tough for me. I had a hard time staying awake. So that's something I'm going to have to work on, because doing night watches is an important part of long-term cruising. And Bubba really wants to be in on this whole thing here. Anyway, so the 3 a.m. watches were really tough for me. It's kind of funny because, you know, that's his favorite memory, and that's my least favorite. So anyway, what were your least favorite memories?
Well, by far, my least favorite memory of the Ha-Ha was doing it with an injured foot. So back in the end of September, I pinched a nerve in my right foot, or my right leg, so I cannot dorsiflex it. I cannot lift my foot up. I cannot move it. I can't move my toes. And because of that, I felt very unstable and unsafe walking along the deck of the boat while we were underway. And for that reason, we did not fly the spinnaker, and I did not feel comfortable deploying the whisker pole, the pole to steady the staysail. So that caused us to have to sail with just our white sails, the jib, the staysail, the mainsail, and we couldn't sail dead downwind, which was typically the direct course to our destination. So we had to do a lot of jibing, a lot of zigzagging to get from the beginning to the end of each leg. Because of that, we were often late, or towards the back of the pack, and one of the last ones to pull in. But I guess it turned out okay because we took first place in our division.
Yeah,
so
we still don't know how that happened.
I think it happened because we sailed almost all of leg 2, and a lot of other people started their engines and did not sail as long. The second least favorite part of this whole thing was dealing with a clogged toilet. So
that was not fun.
Right before we left, we had a new toilet installed, and we didn't really test it. We left, and we had a couple of clogs that were not pleasant to deal with. So I need to do some rearranging of the plumbing.
Right.
So we'll sort that out here in La Paz, and hopefully it'll be okay.
Our next question is, what would we do differently if we could do it again? Charlie, we'll let you go first.
Well, the first thing I'd do is I would test the toilet plumbing for a several-day cruise, kind of a shakedown cruise. That would have identified the issues with the plumbing, and we could have fixed it before we were offshore. During that shakedown cruise, we could have tested the electronics. We had some issues with the autopilot, and I had to do some reconfiguration of the autopilot. And also the same with the Iridium Go. I was learning as we were going along the way, and I made a configuration mistake on the way down, and that caused us to not have service for a few days. But it wasn't a big deal, but I would definitely test that in advance before doing this again.
What I would do differently is I would cook more meals in advance and freeze them, because I had a great menu, but I spent way too much time in the galley cooking. And it was there were times when it was pretty warm down here and pretty uncomfortable, and rocky rolly, trying to cook with the rocking and rolling going on. So I would have just cooked more meals in advance and frozen. And we have a large freezer, but not so much of a refrigerator. So I have plenty of room to cook lots of meals and freeze them, which is what I'm working on now. Before we get out of here, out of La Paz, I'm going to have a bunch of meals frozen and ready for us to just pull out, defrost, and eat.
So our next question is, what do we think we did well? Well, my answer to that question is I think the boat was really well prepared. All the electronics worked well, the sails worked well, the boat performed really well. We really didn't have any major issues other than the ones I described, which is pretty amazing. And so yeah, I think the boat and the way we handled her did really well.
What I think I did well, me personally, is the provisioning and the menu planning. We definitely ate like kings on the Ha-Ha. And part of that came from this book, The Essential Galley Companion, written by Amanda Swan Neal. You may, if you've seen our earlier videos, I did a video in which I shared my Mahina expedition when I sailed from Samoa to Fiji. and I had bought Amanda's book years ago and had tried a number of her recipes. So I got to experience many more of her recipes on my Mahina expedition. So I think I did a really good job of provisioning and feeding us. Our next question is, what are our thoughts on bringing Bubba?
So I think Bubba did great. He was a pleasure to have on the boat. He never got seasick. I think he actually enjoyed most of it, all but maybe a couple of the rougher times when he was a little bit unsettled. But I really can't imagine doing this without him. He was just a pleasure to be with, even though he's being a pain right now.
Yeah, all that noise you hear, it's him scraping it out. We put some treats down there earlier, and he's scratching around anyway.
He was a good watch companion.
Yeah. I think he did not like the overnight sails, especially when it's a little rocky. He doesn't like that movement at night when he can't really see. He doesn't like being down below. He doesn't like the noises, especially when the motor is on. But I think he's really happy to be with us. And, we had a tough decision whether we were even to bring him with us. And as it turns out, I think what he's loving the most is just being with us full time. Because, we were both working. He wasn't with us all the time. And even though it's a smaller space to live on, and he's playing with our feet now, it's a smaller space to live in. He's with us 24/7, and I think he loves it. So I'm really, really glad we brought him.
Our next question is, do you have any comments or suggestions for the Baja Ha-Ha organizers?
Right. They did a fabulous job. There were some complaints about how it ended, and some Ha-Ha boats felt that they got kind of abandoned because the fleet had to split up. But that was because of a storm. The first time in the 26-year history of the Ha-Ha that there was a storm that ended up splitting up the fleet, and that final leg had to get canceled. And I think they handled it as best as they possibly could. Each of us had to make our own decision about how we wanted to handle the storm. We weren't sure exactly where it was going to hit. So I think they did a fine job. We had a great time. What are your thoughts?
I think trying to organize an event with 120, 30 something boats with 400 and something people is a real tough job, and I think they did a superb job. I think their coordination, the communication, the recommendations they made were all superb. The only suggestion I gave them at the end was, and I provided this to Richard, the Grand Poobah, is that as we got to the lower latitudes, I think he should have reminded the fleet to drink plenty of fluids, because a lot of the participants came from Canada or
Northern
Seattle
climes,
or San Francisco, Portland, Oregon. They're not used to this kind of heat, and once you get down to the lower latitudes, you do get dehydrated and you have to drink lots of water. That's something that the Mahina expedition drilled into their crew.
Yes, they did.
And I think it would have been useful. We did have one boat suffer
a crew member
getting dehydrated, and he was non-responsive for a while, so we were all
It was scary,
scared.
yeah.
Anyway, other than that, I think they did a great job.
Okay, our next question is, what would you want to say to anyone considering doing the Ha-Ha next year? And I'll let you start.
All right, my response to that is, don't delay. If this is something you want to do, just do it. Your boat will never be perfect. It's very tempting to keep upgrading it and improving it before you take off. But the bottom line is, there'll always be upgrades to do, and you can do pretty much anything you need to down here. I mean, good marine skilled labor is available here in the bigger cities like La Paz. It's going to cost you about maybe 60% of what you'd pay in the United States. The thing you need to know, though, is parts are not quite as available.
But you can get them.
You may have to ship them in, but you will pay at least 30% more than what you'd pay in the U.S. So get your equipment, but don't worry about getting it all installed and perfectly set up back in the States. You can do that down here.
And what I want to say is kind of along those same lines, but more about you as a person. The longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to go, because, most of the time you're going to do something like this. You're not a young person. Young people don't generally stop everything they're doing, although there were some young couples, but it's mostly people who have been preparing for a long time. And the longer you wait, the harder it is going to be to do, because you start to have health problems, you start to have family issues. I say just find your window and go. If it means you leave your career a little sooner than you had planned, I know that was really hard for Charlie, because he really loved his job and he was at his peak earning potential, but he set that aside because he realized that if we wait too long, then, other things will start to come up. Medical things can start to come up. We're not kids. So don't wait. Get out there and do it.
So our next question is, can you imagine doing this 30 years ago, before the advent of GPS, cell phones, digital communications, internet, etc.?
Yeah, I can, although I'm not sure I would have been as interested in doing it. It was a little more scary back then, but we did some things. But you certainly have experience doing it. We did the Newport Ensenada race when Charlie and I were first together back in the early 80s, and we did that all with paper charts. When I did my Mahina expedition, John and Amanda made a point of ensuring that we know how to navigate using paper charts, because, hey, you know what? The electronics can all go out. You get struck by lightning, you're back to using paper charts and a sextant. So what are your thoughts on that?
I could absolutely imagine doing it before all these electronics. We had our first sailboat in the mid-1980s before GPS. And I was a better navigator then than I am now.
Yeah.
I used to do some pretty amazing things navigating in the fog. I remember coming back from Catalina to Newport Beach and, using the tools we had back then and, right into the jetty. So you don't need all these fancy electronics. They are nice. It makes it a little bit easier, but honestly, I think it makes me a little bit lazy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's not a good thing. So I really need to be more diligent about keeping track of dead reckoning, keeping track of where we are, logging where we are regularly, which is something we did not do on this trip.
Yes, that's true, and we're going to do it on our next leg for sure. The next question we have is, how is your life different now? And Charlie.
So my life now is much more relaxed, definitely a slower pace. In the past I used to be able to be a lot more productive. I would get lots of things done on a weekend when I was working on the boat. Now I'm lucky if I get one or two little things done a day. I've got a huge list of things I want to do here in La Paz, and I'm only like a quarter of the way through, even though we've been here for, 2 months?
2 months.
So...
but a lot of these things we can do once we leave.
I'm not nearly as productive, but it's definitely relaxing, it's enjoyable. I feel like getting to know the community. It's been very pleasurable, but I'm just not as productive as I used to be.
I think that's a good thing. I think that the life that we had before, because we both had kind of big jobs, and it was go, go, go. And we talked to a lot of cruisers before we started this, and one of the things that a number of them said to us was slow down and be happy if you get one thing done a day. And that one thing might just be feeding ourselves. Today, I actually went in grocery shopping, which is a much bigger deal than it was at home. I can't just hop in my car. I don't have a car. So I've got to walk a mile to the grocery store, do all my grocery shopping, and then I Uber back. I don't Uber both ways so we can save money because, we're on a budget. But there's so many things that are different. Of course, living in a country where we don't speak the language, I'm trying to get a little better with my Spanish, but we're managing to make that work. But another major difference is we're eating more meals at home, meaning the boat, because we can't just hop in the car and run out for food. And I think that's making us eat healthier. We're not running out for fast food.
If you're on a plant-based diet like I try to be, it's not quite as easy here in Mexico. It's still, we're eating healthy, I think, but not my ideal diet, which is a plant-based diet.
And there's so many other ways that our lives are different. And the way you can see how our lives are different is just watch our videos. We're going to have a lot more videos coming up of just what life is like living on a boat. Living in tiny spaces compared to our big house is another major difference. You know, we're always on top of each other. Being together 24/7 is different, but you know, we've been together for 38 years or whatever, so that, you know, we're doing fine with that. But there's so many differences that you'll see more as our videos go on.
So our next question is, what are you looking forward to the most?
I'm looking forward to getting out of La Paz, and I don't mean to say that in a negative way. We're loving La Paz, and if we were done with our cruising life and ready to settle somewhere in Mexico, I think this would be a great place to settle. It's a fantastic cruising community. I've made some really good friends here, but we've got our cruising to do still. I'm eager to get out there, to live on the hook, to see all of the places that are ahead of us. I mean, right now the world is our oyster, and I'm ready to get out there and seize it. How about you?
Likewise, I'm looking forward to going to new places, meeting new people, trying new food, seeing new communities. We haven't even gone over to the other side. We're just here on the Cape, and it's a whole different world up in the Sea of Cortez. It's a whole different world down on the mainland side, where it gets very tropical. So I'm looking forward to experiencing all of that.
And then when we're done with Mexico, which we're not exactly sure, definitely 2 years here, possibly even 3. I am looking forward to crossing the Pacific and heading over to the South Pacific, but we're not really thinking about that because that's still a long way off. But that's definitely in my my bucket list. So we will get there eventually. And that's all we have for you. Those are the questions. We appreciate those of you who gave us questions, and we hope that you've enjoyed this little post-mortem of our Baja Ha-Ha and what's coming up next. In our next episode, we will share with you what our life has been like here in La Paz, including spending the holidays here and the sumptuous Thanksgiving and Christmas feasts we enjoyed with our new friends. Also, LeeAnne gives a presentation, so be sure to come back for that. And if you've enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe.